Now, we're starting to see the deep state. They are just putting fake pieces of news out there any way they possibly can because they know what is about to happen, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to convince the American people that their version of the story is true. But the problem is they don't have anything to back it up with. They don't have the documentation. They don't have the proof. All they have is propaganda and name calling. And when we start to look at this, we can see that Trump was out there and he ripped the New Yorker completely apart, saying that the story that they're running is completely fake. Now, the New York published on Monday that some of Trump's advisors suggested in the spring of 2017, around the same time Trump accused Obama of wiretapping Trump Tower, that he should bar Obama's access to intelligence briefings on the advice of then National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. Trump ultimately decided against barring Obama from receiving intelligence briefing, the magazine reported. Now, Trump denied the story on Tuesday, writing online that he never discussed excluding the former president. He went on and he tweeted, "Fake news, of which there is so much. This time, the very tired New Yorker falsely reported that I was going to take the extraordinary step of denying intelligence briefings to President Obama. Never discussed or thought of," Trump wrote on Twitter. Now, Trump also tweeted, "Even James Clapper has admonished John Brennan for having gone totally off the rails. Maybe Clapper is being nice to me so he doesn't lose his security clearance for lying to Congress." Remember that? Back in 2013, Clapper was giving testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee in which he told lawmakers that the government did not wittingly collect data on Americans. Take a listen in what he said here.
Are still wrestling with the various interpretations of it. I think that is a correct answer by Director Mueller, but we still have the question remaining, what are the rights of Americans as of today while the courts are wrestling with this, and that is the matter we have not gotten an answer to. I thank you, and just for you, Director Clapper, again on the surveillance front, and I hope we can do this in just a yes or no answer because I know Senator Feinstein wants to move on. Last summer, the NSA director was at a conference, and he was asked a question about the NSA surveillance of Americans. He replied, and I quote here, "The story that we have millions or hundreds of millions of dossiers on people is completely false." The reason I'm asking the question is, having served on the committee now for a dozen years, I don't really know what a dossier is in this context. So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
Now, you heard him say that they do not collect this data on Americans. Now, shortly after Clapper's testimony, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaked troves of intelligence showing such data collection did occur. So Clapper lied to the American people, lied to Congress. And it looks like this is what Trump is referring to. Now, let's move on to Natalia Veselnitskaya, who is the Russian attorney that met with Trump Jr. And the corporate media went crazy over this, and it turned out to be a nothing burger. Well, we come to find out that Natalia Veselnitskaya operated out of Obama's office. And what I mean by that is that she was operating out of Washington's D.C. offices owned by Cozen O'Connor, a law firm run by former Obama official whose super PAC donated to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. And this is just another piece of information that shows that this was a complete setup. And later in this report, we're going to be starting to connect all the dots and putting everything together to show what really has been happening. I'm going to go through Q's post on this. We see Facebook right now. They are using a secret user reputation score, and it has been exposed. They assign it to different users, predicting their trustworthiness on a scale from 0 to 1. And of course, they're using this to say they're combating fake news and we're rating people. And of course, they're not going to tell you what the algorithm is. And you don't even know the criteria that they're using to figure out who's trustworthy and who's not trustworthy. Because as we can see, as of late, the corporate media has been putting out a lot of fake news reports, and they're turning out to be completely fake, and nobody says a thing about them. But of course, what is happening here, they don't care about that. They want to shut down those individuals that are reporting on the truth, that's countering the narrative of the deep state, countering the narrative of the mainstream media. That's their whole agenda here. Let the people decide what's real and what is fake. These companies shouldn't have the ability to say, believe this organization over this organization. They should let everyone speak freely and let the people decide, let them do their own research, let them figure out who is real and who is fake. This is not the first time this is happening. This has gone back way before social media, where you had other newspapers and other publications where people had to weed through to find out what was real, what was fake, and what was really going on. Now it's just out there, and the deep state, the mainstream media, they have taken control over, and the intelligence agencies have taken control over the social media, and they don't like that there are others out there that are countering their narrative. This is what they're pissed off about, because now people are starting to believe the alternative media and not the mainstream media, not the intelligence reports that are coming in, where they tell the mainstream media what to talk about. Because the mainstream media right now does not do any type of investigative work whatsoever. They're just handed stories and they just repeat it. And if you ever look at some of the YouTube videos, you can see every news organization, they just repeat the exact same thing. We see right now that Gallup did a poll, and Americans right now believe it is more important to try to continue efforts to improve relations between countries rather than taking strong diplomatic and economic steps against different countries. So 58% of the people saying, yes, we should speak to Russia, we should talk to Russia instead of using sanctions and other ways of trying to force them into doing other things. This has to be done with not just Russia, but with many other countries. And I think this is why Trump was out there, and he put a video out there, and the last, I think it was 2 reports ago, the video that he put out there says that we should talk to all leaders. It's going to benefit the United States in the long run if we have a dialogue. Instead of using force, let's talk to everyone, because only good can come out of it. And that is true. If we sit down and we talk and we have a discussion, we'll be able to iron out the differences and come to some type of an agreement. If we just use force and force these countries into doing what we want them to do, like that has been done in the past, you will get war. That's what normally happens. So from his video, it looks like he's trying to change the way everything is being done now, and everything is being done this way because of the deep state. And he's trying to move everyone over to talking to all these countries. And it is the president's job to talk to foreign leaders. This is not collusion. So we can see that the American people are starting to side with this, where they're saying that, yes, we need to have diplomatic channels. Now, out in Syria, we understand that the paid mercenary, the coalition forces, they are completely falling apart. And there's more evidence of this. We see the British government has announced it's ending certain non-humanitarian aid programs inside northern Syria. This is in the rebel territory. They're not going to be supporting the rebels. They're cutting aid to them. Of course, they're citing security woes and everything else, but what's happening here is the coalition is falling apart. And you're going to see each and every one of these countries, they're going to be stepping back now. They're going to be cutting funding. They're not going to be supporting these paid mercenary groups anymore, because they realize it's over. Germany is now saying that, yes, we need to speak to Assad. We need to open up diplomatic channels. Everything is changing right now, and this is just the beginning stages. As more of these countries cut funding to the paid mercenaries and start to scale back their troops, you're going to hear an announcement that the troops are coming out of Syria, because at this point, there is absolutely no reason to keep the troops in there. But I know the corporate media is out there, and they're still reporting that the troops will never leave Syria or Iraq or any of the other Middle Eastern countries. They're going to stay there even when the Islamic State is defeated. That's completely fake, phony, and false. There's no reason for this. Only if these governments want the troops there, they will stay. If the governments do not want the troops there, they have to leave. And right now you can tell Assad, he doesn't want the troops there. Iraq is already saying they don't want the troops there. So eventually what's going to happen is the troops are going to have to leave. And we're getting closer and closer to that point. Let's move on to Q. Q has dropped more posts, but I just want to go back to a previous post where we talked about Showtime, Movie One, and we had BO pointing to CS, pointing to BO. Just wanted to clear this up. It's Bruce Orr pointing to Chris Steele, pointing to Bruce Orr, pointing to Nellie Orr, pointing to Christopher Steele, pointing to Nellie Orr, pointing to Bruce Orr, and then a bunch of blank brackets saying who is next, what's going to be filled in there. And I just wanted to clear that part up on that post. Let's move on to post 1931, August 21st. We see Q put up this link to Reddit, and this is connecting some dots, and under it, Q wrote The Great Awakening, Q uncensored. So this was put up by Lone Star Believer, an Anon, and it says connecting some dots. Let's read through this and let's see what it says here. The Anon says, here's what it looks like when all the pieces are sewn together. It smells like conspiracy and treason. Everyone needs to read this slowly and patiently because it's very important. From 2001 to 2005, there was an ongoing investigation into the Clinton Foundation. A grand jury had been impaneled. Governments from around the world had donated to the charity. Yet, from 2001 to 2003, none of those donations to the Clinton Foundation were declared. Now, you would think that an honest investigator would be able to figure this out. Look who took over the investigation in 2005. None other than James Comey. Coincidence? Guess who was transferred into the Internal Revenue Service to run the tax exemption branch of the IRS? None other than Lois, be on the lookout, Lerner. Isn't that interesting? But this is all just a series of strange coincidences, right? Guess who ran the tax division inside the Department of Justice from 2001 to 2005? None other than the Assistant Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein. Guess who was the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations during this time frame? Another coincidence, Robert Mueller. What do all four casting characters have in common? They all were briefed and or were frontline investigators into the Clinton Foundation investigation. Another coincidence, right? Fast forward to 2009. James Comey leaves the Justice Department to go and cash in on Lockheed Martin. Hillary Clinton is running the State Department, official government business, on her own personal email server. The Uranium One issue comes to the attention of the Hillary. Like all good public servants do, supposedly looking out for America's best interests, she decides to support the decision and approve the sale of 20% of U.S. uranium to no other than the Russians. Now, you would think that this is a fairly straight-up deal, except it wasn't. America got absolutely nothing out of it. However, prior to the sale's approval, none other than Bill Clinton goes to Moscow, gets paid $500,000 for 1 hour speech, then meets with Putin at his home for a few hours. Okay, no big deal, right? Well, not so fast. The FBI had a mole inside the money laundering and bribery scheme. Robert Mueller was the FBI director during this time frame. Yep, he even delivered a uranium sample to Moscow in 2009. Who was handling that case within the Justice Department out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Maryland? None other than Rod Rosenstein. And what happened to the informant? The Department of Justice placed a gag order on him and threatened to lock him up if he spoke about it. How does 20% of the most strategic asset of the United States of America end up in Russian hands when the FBI has an informant, a mole, providing inside information to the FBI on the criminal enterprise? Very soon after, the sale was approved. $145 million in donations. made their way into the Clinton Foundation from entities directly connected to the Uranium One deal. Guess who was still at the Internal Revenue Service working the charitable division? None other than Lois Lerner. Okay, that's all just another series of coincidences. Nothing to see here, right? Let's fast forward to 2015. Due to a series of tragic events in Benghazi, and after the 9 investigations, the House, Senate, and State Department, Trey Gowdy, who was running the 10th investigation as chairman of the Select Committee on Benghazi, discovers that Hillary ran the State Department on an unclassified, unauthorized, outlaw personal email server. He also discovered that none of those emails had been turned over when she departed her public service as Secretary of State, which was required by law. He also discovered that there was top secret information contained within her personally archived email. Sparing you the State Department's cover-up, the nostrums they floated, the delay tactics that were employed, and the outright lies that they were spewed forth from the necks of the Kerry State Department, we shall leave it with this. They did everything humanly possible to cover for Hillary. Now, this is amazing. Guess who became FBI director in 2013? None other than James Comey, who secured 17 no-bid contracts for his employer, Lockheed Martin, with the State Department and was rewarded with $6 million thank you present when he departed his employer. Amazing. All those no-bids just went right through at State. Now he is the FBI director in charge of the Clinton email investigation. After, of course, his FBI investigates Lois Lerner matter at the Internal Revenue Service, and he exonerates her. Nope, couldn't find any crimes there. In April 2016, James Comey drafts an exoneration letter of Hillary Rodham Clinton. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice is handing out immunity deals like candy. They didn't even convene a grand jury. Like a lightning bolt of statistical impossibility, like a miracle from God himself, like the true gangsta Comey is, James steps out into the cameras of an awaiting press conference on July the 8th of 2016 and exonerates the Hillary from any wrongdoing. Do you see the pattern? It goes on and on. Rosenstein becomes Assistant Attorney General. Comey gets fired based upon a letter by Rosenstein. Comey leaks government information to the press. Mueller is assigned to the Russian investigation sham by Rosenstein to provide cover for decades of malfeasance within the FBI and Department of Justice, and the story continues. FISA abuse, political espionage, pick a crime, any crime. Chances are this group and a few others did it. All the same players, all compromised and conflicted, all working fervently to not go to jail themselves, all connected in one way or another to the Clintons. They are like battery acid. They corrode and corrupt everything they touch. How many lives have these two destroyed? As of writing this, the Clinton Foundation, in its 20-plus years of operation of being the largest international charity fraud in the history of mankind, has never been audited by the Internal Revenue Service. Let's not forget that Comey's brother works for DLA Piper, the law firm that does the Clinton Foundation taxes. The person that is the common denominator to all the crimes above and still doing her evil escape legal maneuvers at the top of the three-letter USA agencies. Yep, that would be Hillary Clinton. Now, who is Lisa Barsoomian? Let's learn a little about Lisa. Let's learn about her background. Lisa Barsoomian, an attorney that graduated from Georgetown Law, is a protege of James Comey and Robert Mueller. Barsoomian, with her boss R. Craig Lawrence, represented Bill Clinton in 1998. Lawrence also represented Robert Mueller 3 times, James Comey 5 times, Barack Obama 45 times, Kathleen Sebelius 56 times, Bill Clinton 40 times, Hillary Clinton 17 times. Between 1998 and 2017, Barsoomian herself represented the FBI at least 5 times. You may be saying to yourself, okay, who cares? Who cares about the work history of this Barsoomian woman? Apparently someone does, because someone out there cares so much that they've purged all of her court documents for her Clinton representation in Hamburg versus Clinton in 1998, and its appeal in 1999 from the D.C. District and Appeals Court dockets. Someone out there cares so much that even the internet has been purged of all information pertaining to Barsoomian. Historically, this indicates that the individual is protected CIA operative, Additionally, Lisa has specialized in opposing Freedom of Information Act requests on behalf of the intelligence community. Although Barsoomian has been involved in hundreds of cases representing the D.C. Office of the U.S. Attorney, her email address is lisabarsoomian@nih.gov. The NIH stands for National Institute of Health. This is a tactic routinely used by the CIA to protect an operative by using another government organization to shield their activities. It's a cover so big deal, right? What does one attorney with ties to the U.S. intelligence community really matter? It deals with Trump and his recent tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum imports, the border wall, DACA, everything coming out of California, the Uniparty unrelenting opposition to President Trump, the Clapper leaks, the Comey leaks, Attorney General Jeff Sessions' recusal, and subsequent 14-month nap with occasional forays into the marijuana legalization mix. And last but not least, Mueller's never-ending investigation into collusion between the Trump team and the Russians. Why does Barsoomian, CIA operative, merit any mention? Because she is Assistant Attorney General Rod Rosenstein's wife. So when you start to look at this and you start to connect all the dots, you can see this was a small, tight group that worked together. Now, of course, there are other players where you have Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, and the rest that were included in this, but this is the tight group right here. And when you connect all the dots, you can see how they were maneuvering and able to cover up what they were doing. But now it's all coming out into the open. The Great Awakening is happening. And what is going to happen is that all this information, I'm talking about documented information, proof, not propaganda, is going to be put out into the public realm. And this is why Q is putting out there and showing, let's start connecting all the dots and putting everything together. And once this all starts to happen, we're going to see the Great Awakening. Yes, there are people here that are looking at these boards and listening to the alternative media that are awake, but the rest of the country, the rest of the world, they are going to experience the Great Awakening. And once again, as Q said, many people are going to be angry. Many people are going to reject this. Many people are going to say this is not possible. And the only way to back all this up is to show documentation, to show the proof, to show what they've done. And this is why you have Brennan and you have Clapper and you have the rest of the mainstream media trying to write stories to combat this in some way, somehow. But the problem is they don't have the documentation. They don't have the proof. All they have is the propaganda. And eventually what's going to happen is they're going to be stuck. They're going to have to look at the documentation. They're going to have to look at the proof. They're going to be forced to do this. And once this happens, it is game over.